leaders. Thank you all for attending and for those watching the recording as well. So today we're going to explore the current talent acquisition and retention challenges in the B2B technical sales market and share some proven strategies that you can implement to significantly reduce the friction of sales talent recruiting, onboarding, and retention. We've enabled questions for the webinar, and they will come to us directly. So if you do think of a question, feel free to ask it, and we will leave about 10 minutes at the end of the webinar to address those questions. And if we don't get a chance to address them all during the webinar, we're glad to reach out to you after the webinar and talk further. So just wanted to start off with some introductions. First of all, our guest today with us is Andy Goodman. Andy's the founder of Goodman Consulting Associates, and he's a key partner for numerous integration and tech companies that delivers great talent, and he's crushing industry averages for recruiting with those clients. And so, Andy, if you don't mind sharing just a bit about yourself and Goodman Consulting Associates.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. Appreciate the kind words. I started my business in 1997 with two partners. We've helped companies scale over the last 28 years. We have a very methodical process behind the scenes to attract tough talent in this crazy market that we all face, every company's facing. I had a 5-year stint because I'd helped companies grow, and a few of them sold to private equity. I actually started another business with my younger brother that is a dermatologist, Mohs surgeon, and over a 5-year period, we grew that business from really nothing to multiple locations, 70 employees, and we ended up selling back to private equity. So I took a buyout of that company, and I just get to do what I love doing is my passion, helping great clients of ours and support Revenueify in the back end, finding great talent. So that's who I am and what I do, and it's great to meet everybody.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate that. And then just to share real quick about myself, I'm Jon Ray. I'm your host today, and I'm a CRO and associate consultant for Revenueify. And Revenueify is a revenue optimization consulting partner that helps clients amplify every dollar of revenue through our customer-based selling, RevUp Achiever certification, fractional executive sales leadership, RMR program implementation, sales training, coaching, and talent acquisition. So a lot of things we do to support our clients. I've spent most of my career in revenue generation roles of technical B2B companies, and I've had the privilege of also holding C-level positions that have really provided me with a unique understanding of the critical synergies that are needed between sales, operations, and finance, and really how critical it is to get sales hiring right, because the reality is nothing happens until something is sold. So I live in North Carolina with my wife and 5 kids and 2 Rhodesian Ridgebacks, so glad to be with you all here today, and Andy, glad to have you as well. So we'll jump right in here. And one of the things we wanted to start with was talking through some data, and the data we wanted to talk through is from the Commercial Integrator State of the Industry report for 2025, and this was a report that was a collaboration between Commercial Integrator and the NSCA and Avixa. But Andy, before we jump into the data real quick, as a recruiting partner for numerous B2B technical products and services companies, and across numerous industry verticals as well, what are the general challenges that you're hearing from your clients when it comes to hiring, onboarding, and retaining great talent?
It's tough out there, John. We're working globally with quite a few companies. So a big footprint of ours is the United States, and even on a global scale, everybody's facing the same thing. And this has gone throughout, at least my career. I know, John, you've been in the same space that I've been in for such a long time, but we've battled recessions, we've battled pandemics, coming out of all of this. It truly is a war on talent. I'm going to probably use that phrase a few times in this meeting. So everybody is struggling out there to find top talent. So we work with a lot of growth, cash-rich companies. We don't typically work with startups, but those mid-tier privately held companies that are trying to grow. That's really our sweet spot. And some of the problems that we're facing out there is there's just so many companies hiring. And it is such a war on talent when it comes to technology-based salespeople across the globe that there has to be a truly a methodical process to get these people. And so as we start, getting into this conversation, we'll start, talking a little bit about how and again, this is my opinion and my experience. But a reusable formula that we use at our company that I think I could help and Jon can help, downline that to you folks. But at the end of the day, statistically with my client base, even when we share with them the reusable model, you have to be disciplined to use it. So we'll discuss that later, but everybody is going through the same thing right now in the whole world. So.
Yeah, no, and appreciate that. And it's interesting. I've spent a number of years in some executive leadership peer groups, and yeah, it's a common thread, right? When you talk about challenges companies face. And so let's look at some of the actual data from Commercial Integrators State of the Industry Report for 2025 here. So jumping in, the initial data on the left side of the slide here is really around 2024 revenue versus 2023. And we can see that this research found that 44% of companies actually were recording flat or declining revenue from 2023 to 2024. And if you take into account inflation that we've been experiencing, then in reality, you could really loop that additional 12% of companies that really didn't have enough revenue growth to combat inflation and rising costs, which would bring that flat or worse category to almost 56% of companies that were surveyed, which is pretty interesting. Andy, what are you hearing, in the industries and the clients that you're working with now that we're midway through Q3 of 25? What are you hearing regarding 2025 revenue year to date? Are there still challenges? Does it seem like it's getting better or worse, about the same?
That's a great question. In the last 30 days, just for my business and alone, and so this is my perspective, this is my feeling. But talking with other SaaS clients of ours, there has been a serious uptick with my business to the point where I'm probably going to start hiring more people because I'm just getting flooded with companies trying to hire. So I'm not sure what's going on in the marketplace, but this has all happened within 30 days. So that's a good thing. I was telling my wife, last night, it's a funny saying I always say as a business owner, you don't sleep when you have not enough business, and you don't sleep when you have too much business. And we're at that phase right now where we're coming close to having enough business. So I'm hoping things are on the pickup. It seems like it is. I'll probably get a better sense as we move truly into fourth quarter and we start, projecting, Q1 for next year. But all signs are pointing positive. Knock on wood.
Yeah. And I think, as Revenueify, we're a MAC partner, member advisory council partner of the NSCA, which is one of the, biggest trade organizations in the industry. And so, we're hearing a lot of the same things. People were like, hey, early 2025 still seemed like people were holding back on releasing purchase orders. And it seems like that's starting to let loose a little bit, or that there's been some, increase in certain areas or certain technologies as opposed to some others, right? And I think everyone is agreeing right now still, though, that it just still feels volatile, and it's hard to get our arms around, are we back in growth mode? Or are we just, wait and see? But that, that doesn't leave a great feeling. But we are seeing a lot of activity of companies out there looking for sales talent. And I think, part of that is just realizing that, there's struggles to hit revenue targets and growth targets. And so, one of the things that people tend to focus on is, well, let's bring in more salespeople, right? Well, that doesn't always solve the problem in and of itself, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So in the middle section there, we can see that there was actually incredibly 76% of companies that said that their number one challenge heading into 2025 was expected to be talent. And that meant finding talent, onboarding talent, retaining talent. And that's a massive number when you look at how many companies said, yeah, we agree that that's our number one issue. Do you see, Andy, some trends or challenges that, are potentially causing that to be such a large issue still for companies?
I truly think in my career, I've seen sales dramatically change over the last 10 to 15 years. If you go back 10, 15 years ago, there was so many different companies hiring mass sales forces. The copier industry was still booming. The payroll industry was coming up. We had the Cintas's of the world. We had all these different companies that companies can pull from. But over the last, 10 years, the pharmaceutical industry, they're not around really anymore. The medical space has changed dramatically. So the big payroll companies, they're kind of oversaturated with salespeople. But the office product space, there's a lot of industries that have just changed. And so when companies, these cybersecurity companies, these tech companies, these SaaS growth companies are looking for good talent, it's like, where do we go find these people?
Mhm.
And so there's a pool of good talent out there, but everybody's trying to pull from it. And so, as we continue this conversation, we start getting into the meat of this reusable program that I think can really help everybody if they truly listen and take hiring as, hiring is as important as anything else out there. But a lot of times companies put that on the side, even though they say it's the most important thing. So we'll address some more later, but
Yeah.
yeah, we're running into this a lot.
Okay. Yeah, no, appreciate that insight. And finally on the right side there, tying to the middle section of data, 54% of respondents said that their biggest challenge in filling open positions was a lack of qualified candidates. I think the second, largest issue was around increases in compensation expectations. So just keep those things in mind because, what we're still seeing is that these strategies that we're going to talk about in just a minute here are really still just a major issue and concern for the industry. So let's talk real quick about talent challenges that we see and hear about as I mentioned previously, being a member advisory council partner with the NSCA in the integration industry. Sales hires have a massive impact on achieving company objectives. And getting that right can mean achieving those objectives versus not achieving those objectives. And some of the things that we commonly hear within the integration industry, and I hear it within manufacturing and automation as well, is that there's a long ramp up time for new hire sales people to become effective and producing sales. That annual negative cost impact then as well of value added resellers and companies is around 2 to 3 times more than average sales professionals total comp in the industries. Let me just state that again, right? The negative cost impact to companies for slow ramp up times, for rehires, for open sales positions is costing them 2 to 3 times more annually than what it would cost to find the right person, get them onboarded, and get them effective. We still see replacement costs continuing to rise. And one of the other things, and we see that in the data too, is that it just takes forever to hire new talent. And I honestly believe that that number says in the data we have here, 30 to 60 days on average to get someone, hired in the hiring process. But my experience and what I'm hearing from clients is that it usually seems like it's longer than that, maybe 60 to 90 days or more. Andy, are you seeing that shift in the market right now? What exactly are you seeing as a business owner in the recruiting space, in the talent acquisition space, around these issues?
Well, I coach all my clients. So when my clients come to me, my business forever has been word of mouth. And so when somebody calls me, they call me because they're having a problem. They can't get these positions filled. And the majority of these companies I work for, they have pretty decent sized talent acquisition teams internally, and their talent acquisition people aren't able to find people. And so what we do behind the scenes, and why I think we're so successful with Jon and Tyler, is the fact that we do have a algorithm that we have that is able to attract people that others can't get. And the reason being is if you're a candidate nowadays, and the majority of the people are found off of LinkedIn, they're getting bombarded on a daily basis by 10 to 20 companies and recruiters. And so what's happening is these companies are having a tough time finding top talent because they can't get these people to respond. And when companies run ads, you're going to get hundreds of B and C level talent, not even B, I'd say C and D level talent.
Yeah.
And so the problem is everybody is facing it. And the other issue is there's so many recruiters out there, and recruiters, they can set up shop with a phone and a computer, and they could sell the story that, hey, we're going to get the job done. But what's happening is those companies are going out of business because they can't get the job done. And so to answer your question, we're seeing this across the board, finding, attracting top talent. But that's what makes, John, our partnership so special. Anytime we jump in with one of the clients you bring to the table, we've gotten every single position filled with great talent. So hopefully that answers some of the question.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate that. And, all that said, we looked at a lot of data. We've talked about a lot of challenges, but this is not meant to be all doom and gloom, right? The real world is that there's common challenges that all companies face with talent acquisition and retention. But let's talk about some strategies moving forward here for overcoming these challenges and improving our chances of finding great qualified talent that has the ability to really deliver results sooner. That can reduce the average time positions remain vacant as well. And so there's three key strategies that we want to discuss, and those are going to be, number one, defining your ideal sales profile, right? Your ideal sales rep, sales manager, sales position, defining that profile, building a repeatable framework for hiring success. Number two is going to be leveraging sales profiling tools to conduct more effective and insightful interviews. And then third and last will be establishing a communication rhythm. And that's really meant to create a structured onboarding and development process that will help you to retain and grow your talent. So let's jump into strategy number one here, which is defining your ideal sales profile. Andy, why is building a repeatable framework for hiring success critical?
Because it drives your revenue. I mean, it is so key to hire the right salesperson, as you just discussed. If you turn somebody in 6 months or a year, you just wasted a lot of time and money. And some of the things that I really encourage my companies to do, and I did this when I grew a business over 5 years, you have to pay for talent. And if you don't pay for talent, you're not going to get that person to come and work for you. So, my rule of thumb with my recruiting firm, with my medical practice, was we're gonna pay people more money than they've ever made in their life. I've learned over my career that there are really statistically two reasons why people will leave. And again, we're targeting really good people. We're not going to find those people that post their resumes everywhere. We're going to target really good people. And to target those people, they're going to leave for one of two reasons. We happen to, catch them at a good time when they're upset with their current boss or company, or it's going to be money. And so those are the two key things that are going to get somebody in sales to move. So there's a lot of process behind that, but yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more in depth around, a hiring formula, if you will, right? So, can you take a little bit of time and, I've never been really a fan of math, so do me a favor and make this equation easy for me. What does this mean? How does this hiring formula work? And talk us through that, please.
So this is kind of behind the scenes how we run my business. So whenever we pick up a search, I've got sourcing people, recruiters that funnel people to me, and I train them on what to look for. And this is part of the process with us. So what we like to do is we're not going to run ads. We're going to go find people that look really good. Our companies will tell us what to go, the companies they might want us to target or the industries. And so we're going to go after those industries. So when we get a person to respond to us in the recruiting process, what we like to do is we always like looking at their early life experience. So every salesperson is going to be able to sell you, but there's things that you could look through to figure out if they're really good or not. So we like an early life experience, if it's an ex-college athlete, an ex-high school athlete, an ex-band member, an ex what is it? The boys club, what do they call it? The Boy Scouts. Like if they're a boy, like
yeah.
yeah, just something that is going to show early life experience. Where they succeeded, where they had challenges. One of my favorite answers when we start digging in and we're interviewing people, we like to hear the why. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And a lot of times people, if they go back and say, well, look, Andy, I've got a family. My parents instilled these unbelievable values and traits in me when I was a high school athlete. I had a ball in my crib at the earliest of ages. I went to college. I'm a 4.0 student. I was, played sports. Now my career's over. I'm focused all in my sales career. And at the end of the day, I don't want to let my family down. So, we always love going back to early life experience. That's going to tell a lot. Past trends are going to yield future trends. So that's great. As we move through this slide, once we get to find somebody, I actually would say the hunters would be before stability, because we're going to be looking for a specific type of profile. We want hunters. Like, we don't want farmers. The farm industry died. That's why that's a tough industry for people, because they were used to bringing coffee to doctors' offices, and that's how they sold. They don't understand how to sell. So hunters is unbelievably important to 99.999% of my client base throughout the world. We all want the hunters. So once we find the person that comes from a hunting industry, stability is key to us. So if we've got a hunter that has numbers, statistics, accomplishments, so as you try to build your reusable profile here, we're looking for stability, we're looking for hunters, but we also want to see that person that on the resume shows how they stack rank in their office. So if we've got somebody that isn't showing stack rankings, isn't showing percentage of plan, doesn't have the stability, moving every year, year and a half, they're not becoming an expert at what they do. And that's somebody you want to run from, in my opinion. So we want the hunters with numbers, stats, accomplishments. We want the person that has stability, that's hopefully, a President's Club winner. I always think 3 years plus is great, for me to target somebody for my business. So if the early life is there, we've got a hunter, we've got stability. Now the comp, this is the important part where I get a lot of pushback. The comp package is unbelievably important. With the comp package, if we're going to recruit somebody that, let's say, has 2 to 5 years of experience coming from the SaaS industry, and they're the hunter mentality, they've got the stability, they're making money. And when we target them, they're happy. And over a 3 to 5 year period, not only are they happy doing what they're doing, they've made friends. And if we catch them where they're happy with their employer and we're trying to recruit them out, going back to, a statement I made about 5 minutes ago, people leave for 2 reasons, especially stable people.
Sure.
Catch them at the right time and money. So the comp package has to align. A lot of times companies are like, okay, Andy, it's a little scary. We know that there's going to be turnover, and we know it's going to be a flip of a coin if anybody makes it. But if we're going to offer them the exact same money that they're making now, nobody's going to make a move. And so it takes a lot from an entrepreneur and a business owner that spends the money for these people to just step up and do it. But that is how you're going to attract these top people. And so that's how we recruit them. Industry experience.
Share with us why that's a minus.
What, the industry? What?
Yeah. How that relates.
So I was going to the industry experience as a minus. It goes back to the 4 things that we're talking about: the early life, the hunters, the stability, and the comp. If you find somebody that understands a sales process and is making money and is a President's Club winner and has the stability and is a hunter and has that algorithm internally of, hey, Andy, here's what I do on a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis. It takes me literally 50 to 100 calls a day to set up 5 or 6 new appointments. So these people understand the process. So the industry experience, why I think it's a negative, if you're going to go after somebody in your industry, number one, if they're any good, they're not going to want to leave and go to the competition.
Or
number 2,
expensive. Yeah.
What's that?
Or they're very expensive. Yeah.
They get very expensive, so, with the dollar that we typically run, with John and Tyler for this group nationally, usually the money's kind of all the same. It's kind of all of the same. But, to go outside of the industry, I encourage that for every verticalized market that I work. If it's the medical industry, if I'm working with private equity groups, if I'm working with SaaS companies, get out of the industry, go find people that are sort of related to the industry. We could find people, and you can find people that are coming from, which I mentioned earlier, the payroll industry. There are so many good SaaS salespeople over there where these companies invest $50,000 to $80,000 in these people per year to get them trained up to sell SaaS. But the problem with those industries, they're so saturated, and there's so many of those companies, those people they're open. There are some people that work at that company in that industry that are major market reps and higher end reps that are making, 2 to 500 a year. But there is a level of rep over there that is, it keeps my business cranking because we target those companies like crazy. So go outside the industry, go find those people that have that four-prong formula that's sitting in front of you, and recruit those people and get the money in place, and you're going to find unbelievable talent, guaranteed.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that. That definitely helps. I think the key there, as you mentioned, right, is just that, and we'll see this in our next slide here, which is, we've got some action items for everybody that's attending or, watching the recording. And that first action item is that, we want to ask you to evaluate your current hiring formula. Do you have one? Does it need improvement? And then implement the elements of the formula as we've talked about today, as Andy's explained, to really define your candidate ideal traits and comp package. I'll just speak real quick to that. Thinking through that, what we said may not resonate for every single company and organization, but the elements, the principles of that should. I've had so many conversations around people that are just so focused on industry experience, technical experience in the sales role. And it's like that can be learned, but if you're missing the other four pieces or even any one or two of those, you might have a really solid technical person who is going to be in the wrong seat because they don't have those other aspects. And Andy, when you were talking about, early life experience as well, one of the things that it reminded me of is, we've had some engagements together, and I know you've pointed out specifically when someone shared, hey, like I had a pretty rough upbringing, and we didn't have a lot of means, and I had to fight and get myself into school, and so even that, and we talked about sports and frats, and not that you're trying to say we should just hire athletic frat boys for every sales position. I know that wasn't the, but
Right.
but yeah, no, I mean, it's just finding those qualities in an individual that makes them a successful salesperson, but it's part of who they are, not necessarily a learned skill, even though some of it can be learned. So anyway, our first action is to evaluate that for your company internally. And so let's move on to strategy number 2 here. So that is using sales profiling tools. And I'll just speak to this for a minute, because this is a key portion of what we do at Revenueify and our partnership with Andy, our recruiting partner, as well as what we do in a lot of our sales coaching and training engagements. And I'll just say that I've used numerous different sales profiling tools, not necessarily even sales driven. There's a lot of great tools out there. One thing that I would recommend is make sure that whatever your tool that you're using, that it gives you the opportunity to build a database, if you will, or to build out a model that is based on what we just talked about just before, based on your ideal candidate profile, based on industry data, based on that role within your organization and what it's going to take. Some of them allow you to actually, survey a couple existing people on your team that you would say, hey, if I can find another person who's, wired like that and producing that would be awesome. You can have them take that and build a model off of that as well. And so one of the things that we utilize pretty regularly with Revenueify and our clients and any engagement that we have is the PXT profile. And I just threw a snapshot in here of mine. And, I'm kind of throwing myself under the bus a little bit. I joked with Andy about the formula and said I'm not good at math. And if you look at my, initial issues, it makes that clear. That's why I'm in sales and not engineering, and that's okay. But this is a brief snapshot of what is a 16-page PXT report, and this is built on industry-specific and role-specific data. It's full of details around each of the three key areas, which are thinking style, behavioral traits, and interests. And it really gives you the ability to plot as well a full team comparison. So you can compare a candidate to your existing team. You can compare your existing, successful team members against candidates. You can, utilize this to just look at the overall makeup of, thinking style, behavioral style, and interests of your team. And what this does is, it really allows you. I go back to the Jim Collins good to great thing, right? You've got your company is the bus, your vision and mission is where the bus is headed. You need to figure out what the right seats are on the bus. But then the most critical thing in all of that is you have to have the right butts in the right seats. And so that's what we're after here is how can you use data, knowledge, and also, building specific uh, uh, reports that are helping to ensure that you have the right butt going into that seat, right? And so there's a lot of different variations that you can use in these things. We're always glad to provide more insight around that. We use, elements of DISC as well in some of our engagements, but I would highly recommend this. It always surprises me when we're talking to HR managers or hiring managers or directors, how few of them, take a step like this to really ensure that they're finding someone that aligns with what they need in their organization, that seat that they have open. So again, a little bit of action for everyone participating here. Profile should not be about pass or fail. It's really digging in on key areas to evaluate, how self-aware the candidate is, the level of their EQ, their emotional quotient, how well they interact with other people, how well they can make adaptations in those areas. And it also allows you to learn how coachable a candidate may or may not be in the future. So if you aren't leveraging profile tools in your hiring process, or your current tools don't provide evaluations based on industry and positional data, just take the time to explore some options that are out there. And again, if you have questions, reach out to us. We're glad to talk through, not only the solutions we use, but other things we've been exposed to and what might be helpful to you as well. So let's jump into our third strategy real quick here, and then we'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A. Just a reminder, if you do have questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A comments there. But our third strategy is establishing a communication rhythm, and this is just as critical, if not more, than the other ones we've talked about. But Andy, can you share with us, and this will segue into what we're going to talk about in a minute versus about communication versus process. But
Yeah.
what does it mean or look like to create a structured onboarding and development process to retain and grow your talent?
That's another great question. This is sensitive to me because in my world, communication is the most important thing. When we're recruiting top talent, we have to have a good line of communication. I always encourage companies, within 48 hours, maybe 3 days tops, you have to have a next step in the process. I'm working with, as we all get older in life, I'm starting to work with some managers that have never managed before, but they're getting the opportunity because they were a good sales rep to move into leadership. And it's a struggle for me because I'm trying to get these people to understand that it is a true recruiting process. Communication has to be sound, and you've got to get these candidates, top talent, on and off the market if you really like them. A lot of these younger managers are saying, Andy, you know what? If they don't see the vision in what we're trying to do and they can't wait for us, they're just not the right fit for us. And that's not the right attitude to have. It's so ridiculous to me, but I deal with it. So this is just one of many reasons why communication is so key. And so they're wondering why now after 3 months they haven't filled a position, and I have to get the executives involved because I'm trying to juggle a balance of not frustrating anybody and keeping a client happy, but also saying you guys are broken and we've got to get this fixed. So I'm dealing with that right now with a medical software company. But when communication is working properly and there is a great defined process to get somebody on and off the market, you will land top talent. It's when there's breakdown in communication, when you don't have an onboarding structure, when there's still things up in the air. The other thing that I'd like to say is this: when you recruit people, you got to look at this as, and I know I use these sports analogies, but it's like college recruiting. It's like when you get a person that comes to the table, and if you're a college coach recruiting the best quarterback, you want to roll out the red carpet. I have some leaders that during the interview process, they ask ridiculous questions. The candidates call me up afterwards and they're like, Andy, I don't even know if they like me. But it turns out that the leaders really liked them. So my advice is be engaging, have a process, have it in a timely manner with a lot of communication, make that person feel loved, and you're going to have a much higher success rate on onboarding and keeping those people if the culture's in place as well once they get there and the sales program's in place. So that's just a little bit of my 2 cents there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And again here, yeah, I think you mentioned a couple things that, what happens when you see this missing. But talk to us a little bit about, that issue, right? Like when things go less than desirable, you know, talk to us about, we a lot of times look at it, right? Lack of communication, but is it a lack of communication or is it a lack of process? Is it yes, both? How do you view that and try to combat, that because I think it's a really common occurrence that again, from the client side as well, right? The hiring company, man, I just know that having been involved in it and, worked with HR teams, it can be so overwhelming when you're in the midst of recruiting that like to remember like, oh man, I've got to reach out to this person. And did I follow up with that person? And did I update that? So talk to us just a little bit about that chaos and what, you as someone who's a professional in that world, has done to work through that.
So just to see this screen right here, to even be discussing this, it's broken, right? It's broken.
Yeah.
If we have to talk about lack of communication, we have to talk about lack of process. It's broken. Whoever's doing it wrong. And so we try to encourage companies and support companies that communication is so important. And not having a good process in place, you will lose talent. 100%. So I'm going to go back to my headache client right now, this medical software company. We had a candidate interview. They loved him, loved this candidate. He interviewed 5 days ago. We have yet to heard feedback on what the fourth interview in the process looked like. So I put a little pressure on him, and the director finally calls me back. He's like, "Oh, Andy, we loved him. We're just busy. We're just real busy." And so that goes back to what I said earlier. When a company engages my firm and they're saying how hard it is to hire people, but yet they're too busy to provide feedback to share with the candidate over the last 4 days calling me saying, "Andy, they must have somebody else if you still don't have feedback." And I sent them thank you emails and they haven't responded to my thank you emails. It is just such a lack of communication. The candidate, I'm trying to save this guy for 4 days waiting for them to give me the positive feedback, but we're going to probably lose the guy. But then on top of that, with the lack of process, every week or two, they're having this person interview. So the opening's been open for 3 months because we've lost 4 or 5 really good candidates because there's no process in place. And so it's just a multitude of craziness that's happening that I'm trying to educate these young new leaders. And it's just a mess, but they're both horrible.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and it's interesting too. We'll talk about the next step here, the action item, in just a second. But in some of our engagement scope of works around recruiting, we've detailed in there, hey, these are the expectations we have of you as our client to communicate back to us, so that we can communicate back to the candidate. Because there's a lot of time, and they're making an investment in this recruiting process, and so the action item here is really around. It's a yes and, right? So have a process that clearly defines your communication protocol, right? And set up the gates to keep the team that's involved in the hiring process accountable to that, right? Message that candidate in some way, shape, or form at least every 48 hours. You will set your company apart with that candidate in their mind as well. They may be on the fence because maybe they're not being offered the compensation package they really wanted, or there's maybe some other things. But man, all of a sudden you start communicating when they're just left hanging from everybody else. That can set you apart as well. So as we move to a close here, let me just remind everyone of really our three takeaways here. Both Andy and I have really seen these three key strategies have a real measurable impact in the time it takes to find the right candidates and reducing the cost of vacant and replacement positions and hiring talent that's a great fit and has the best potential to start delivering results in less ramp up time and to stick around to be someone who's able to be retained. So, just again, define your ideal sales profile to have a repeatable success. Utilize a sales profiling tool that will make interviews more successful for your organization, and then define that rhythm of communication when you're hiring. Those are our three kind of key strategies, things that are simple enough for hopefully people to take away some value today. We've got just about 4 or 5 minutes left here, so we're going to dig in and find out what questions we have. And I don't see any posted yet, so if anybody has any that they wanted to post in the Q&A section, you should be able to access that and do that. And I will ask our producer as well if there's any that they've seen come across to throw those to me in Teams, and we'll address any that we do have. All right. I'm not seeing any. So, again, no worries there. If you do have any questions or you want to discuss any of these items further, I just wanted to share with you that, first of all, thank you for attending today. Thank you to our guest, Andy Goodman, and thank you as well to Commercial Integrator and the NSCA for their research and data that allows us to create strategies to improve these business outcomes. Again, if you have any additional questions or you want to learn more about any of these strategies, please feel free to reach out. We are willing to have a conversation. It does not need to be, we're not trying to sell you anything. We really are here to help. And one thing that we do want to offer, if you'd like to test drive a PXT aptitude test, we are willing to offer through Revenueify anyone who would like to try that out, a 50% discount. Normally that is about $150 per person for that assessment. So we will offer it to you at $75 if you reference this webinar. And again, you can either email one of us, our email addresses are there in that slide, or you can scan that QR code and that should lead to a booking link, both for having a further discussion or wanting to schedule an opportunity to utilize PXT or talk about any of this further. So any closing comments or thoughts, Andy?
No, John, this was great. It was fun to be a part of this. If anybody, like John said, has any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or John. Would love to help you all figure out a way to attract and keep top talent in a reusable process. So I'm here if you need me. If not, great being a part of this.
Same. Thank you again, Andy. Thank you for everyone for attending, and let's go out there and hire great people, build great teams, and crush our business objectives. Take care.
Let's do it. Thank you.